Hi, I'm Don Bishop.
Hi, I'm Martin Cooper.
I'm the executive editor and associate publisher of AGL magazine.
They call me the father of the handheld cellular phone.
Well, that's pretty good. Father of the handheld cell phone. Okay. And author. Marty's new book is Cutting the Cord: The Cell Phone Has Transformed Humanity, published by Rosetta Books. He wrote of his vision for the cell phone of the future and how to overcome the gulf between students who have the internet access and those who don't, known as the digital divide, and his highs and lows. He'll talk about all of that. Time magazine named him one of the top 100 inventors of all time, and Marty married an inventor. His lovely wife is Arlene Harris. Marty, if I asked Arlene to describe you, what would she say?
Nobody's ever asked me that question before. And it sounds like a very personal question to hear to ask, but Arlene is very fond of me. And she would tell you that I am her life partner and that I'm wonderful. And she can't say enough good things about me. I just made all that up, and I hope she thinks that, but I have no idea.
You have been a partner in business with Arlene, co-founding Cellular Business Systems, SOS Wireless Communications, and Arraycom.
We actually have started at least 4 or 5 companies together. And the most notable one is a company that was called Great Call Incorporated. That company now is a part of Best Buy. Great Call, Arlene actually invented the jitterbug phone, which is a simple phone intended for people who don't want the complexity of modern phones. We founded that company about 10 or 12 years ago, and Best Buy bought it 2 years ago.
Let's talk about that first handheld cellular telephone in 1973, made by a team of Motorola engineers. What led you to create that phone?
What inspired us was that we were in the two-way radio business. We built two-way radios for police departments, fire departments, businesses, and a company called the Bell System had announced that they had created a thing called cellular telephony. They were going to give people the freedom to talk anywhere. And their definition of telephony was car telephones. We had observed that people had been trapped by that telephone wire, stuck to their desk, trapped in their homes for 100 years. Now the telephone company, the Bell System, wants to trap them in their cars, and we didn't think that was right. We had observed that when you give somebody a phone that they can carry with them and move everywhere, that they had a freedom that they never had before, and that's what people wanted. And so we had to battle the biggest company in the world because they wanted a monopoly. They wanted to be the only provider of cellular telephony, and they wanted to be car telephones. They wanted to also get into our business. So we had to persuade the world that they were ready for personal handheld telephones, for the freedom that those personal handheld telephones provide. And I decided that the only way to persuade people was to actually show them one, actually to give them the opportunity to walk around and use a real cellular phone. And by the way, I have one here.
You do. And there it is.
This is what that very first phone looked like. As you could tell, it's rather large. The design that we came up with was only about this big, Don. And then we handed it to the engineers, and they had to put literally 1,000 components into the box and a battery that was about half the size of this thing. So it just kept growing. It weighed about 2.5 pounds, about a kilogram. The battery life was about 25 minutes of talking. And that wasn't a problem because at this weight, you couldn't hold it up for 25 minutes. So And that is the phone that we demonstrated in New York in 1973.
Here is a photograph of you, Marty, taken on 6th Avenue in New York on April 3rd, 1973, just after you made the first public telephone call on the handheld cell phone. A Motorola field service technician, Bill Barber, installed the 2 base stations. Motorola filed a patent application for the Dynamic Adaptive Total Area Coverage Cellular System in September 1973, with Marty's name as one of the inventors. A commercial Dynatac cellular system went on the air in 1983, and Motorola offered the Dynatac 8000X handheld cellular telephone that worked on all cellular systems. No free phones with service contracts in those days. Marty, what has your attention today?
My biggest interest now is the digital divide. I think we have a really serious problem in this country and worldwide in the sense that it's not possible to get a genuine education today without having access to the internet. And we have a school system that was created 200 years ago by the Otto Bismarck of Austria. That system where somebody stands up in front of a class and talks for an hour was created to create armies. We don't need armies anymore, but we want our people to be educated. And the best way to do that is what they call the flipped classroom. Let people get educated in the real world and come to school so they get counseling from their teachers, and where the teachers teach them as individuals, not as a mass class. But in order to do that, you do have to have the students have access to the internet. In the United States, one of the most advanced countries in the world, as many as 40% of our students don't have access to the internet for one reason or another. The 2 reasons, the obvious reasons, are they're in rural areas where they don't have coverage, or they just can't afford it. We have to solve that problem. We know that people whose minds are challenged, who have access to all the knowledge of the world from the time they are able to operate a device that looks at the internet, their brains will grow faster. They will be smarter than people who don't have that access. How can you have a society, Don, that is a 2-class society? The smart guys and the dumb guys. Not acceptable. Somehow we have to figure out how to solve that divide and make wireless internet access available to everybody that is learning.
Are there elements of wireless infrastructure that play a role in expanding this connectivity?
Well, the emphasis has to be on minimum cost, maximum coverage. It turns out that the carriers are focused today on 5G. I think you're aware of that. And 5G is going to be an exceptional technology in the future, but 5G is focused on the Internet of Things. We haven't finished yet serving the Internet of People. And the existing infrastructure is just too costly to work in rural areas, and at least at today's pricing, that even students, many of them in the urban areas, can't afford it. And interestingly enough, since you brought it up, the most fruitful area for reducing cost is, first of all, to design a system that's designed for that purpose. It's not a 3G, 4G, 5G system that's designed to provide all services for all people. It ought to be something that is focused on students providing coverage and affordability. Think about it. I think that's all the rest of us would prefer. And so what I have conceived of is a system that has technology that is specifically designed for education. And I think that's what this country ought to do. I'm not sure that people are going to pay attention to me, but that's what us dreamers do. We think of what the outcome is and hope that we'll have some impact.
What do you need to do to get their attention?
I'm trying hard. I'm on the FCC Technological Advisory Council. I have submitted some papers. I'm hopeful that the new administration is more sensitive to these kinds of things than the last, but that's all I can do is write papers and talk to intelligent people like you, Don, and see if I can persuade you.
Well, thank you. I hope to live up to that someday.
No question about that.
You have spoken of learning from failure. What would be an example?
I'll tell you about my biggest failure. This is covered in my book. And I hope that doesn't deter anybody from buying the book. But you're well aware, Don, that every radio, every computer has got a quartz crystal in it that is the time base for that device.
Yes.
It was my observation, seems like 100 years ago, but it was in the 1960s, that this time base would be very useful to have a device on your wrist that told you what time it is with some accuracy. And so I had my guys build a quartz crystal that could fit into a watch. And would you believe it, that the world started moving that direction. Quartz watches became very popular. And Motorola, my group, built most of the quartz crystals that went into watches. And we were making money hand over fist. And at that point, the Japanese got interested.
Oh.
And the price of a quartz crystal moved from the $2 that we were charging down to $1.50 and then 30 cents. And we were not ready. And within a period of 2 years, our share of market went from 60 or 70% to virtually nothing. I learned a lesson, and I learned about the experience curve, and I learned about creating an umbrella for other people to get under. So it was a failure, but it was a very valuable lesson. That was my low.
How do you get high, if you know what I mean?
The thrill of my life is to have a new idea. And that happens to me quite frequently. My new ideas are not necessarily original, but they're original with me. And if I can think of a different way to think about something and express it and to teach somebody, and that is the thrill of my lifetime. And that happens to me quite frequently. So I'm on a high. I would guess, by the way, without taking any drugs,
Okay.
every couple of days, some inspiration will come to me and I'll think of it. And one example of that is I actually have an original quotation. You can go into any list of well-known quotations and you'll read that Marty Cooper said, the best way to think out of the box is to not create the box in the first place.
Yes.
And it turns out that concept has been a fundamental focus in my life. I think that one of the handicaps we have in our society is that we want to arrange everything in neat little boxes, and the world isn't like that. You teach somebody about arithmetic and geography and history, they don't learn how to solve problems. When they get out in the real world, they deal with all of these things as a system. And that's one of the improvements we need in our, not only in our educational process, but in the way we think about things. We should be thinking about things as systems, and we should be designing systems, not products in isolated silos. You didn't expect to get that lecture, did you?
I'm pretty happy to get it. Marty, what's ahead? What do you see for the cell phone of the future?
I'm not very happy with the existing cell phones. I think the smartphone is a device that's designed to do all things for all people. And when you do that, you don't design something that is optimum for any of its features. The cell phone is not an optical phone. It's not an optical visual device. It's not an optimum healthcare device. It's not an optimum educational device. And yet you know that every person is different than every other person. And so your cell phone ought to be a device that's designed for you personally. And of course, the people that build a cell phone tell you, oh, we've solved that problem. And we have apps. Oh, that's a great solution. Now you can optimize your cell phone by selecting from among 2 billion apps. Doesn't make any sense at all. If you want to know what the future of the cell phone is, get my book, Cutting the Cord, and I'll tell you all about it.
Thank you so much, Marty.
Great pleasure, Dan.
All right, here are some hints from the book. Marty explains how the future cell phone will transform medicine and healthcare, contributing to the eradication of disease, elimination of poverty, extension of life, and the close coupling of human and artificial intelligence. Marty's book is published by Rosetta Books. Visit rosettabooks.com. The book is available from Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble, and IndieBound. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.